Good morning and welcome to the November meeting. Apologies for absence, we have Mike and Susan and Jeremy Horton. Oh, and Theo's up there, sorry, next one. So usual thing, declarations of interest. I haven't started yet. 30 seconds. Yeah. Robert?
No, that's okay.
No, we're on there.
No. Marcus?
No.
Brilliant. Excellent, thank you. Chairperson's announcements. Well, I think the main thing that's happened in the last month is that we've launched the partnership plan, and it all went very well in Lincoln Town Hall, and take back our thanks because it was a beautiful venue and lots of compliments and thanks to members that came along. And I think you'd agree it was a good event, wasn't it? And very well received. We've had a lot of very positive publicity from that, which was great. And in a moment we're going to hopefully show a video. It's not ready, not quite. The Dark Sky Festival happened straight after that. That finished on Sunday. It was extremely successful. We even had national press coverage on that. And I'm sure you've seen things that are in the newspapers and on the local news as well. So the next year's is the 16th of October to the 1st of November. Last week before, we had the Chairman of National Parks England came to visit us last Monday, which seems like 3 months ago. The Chairman of National Parks England came and quite a good day out actually, didn't we? Did lots, took up to Driver, went to Lynmouth, she came in here briefly, Pinkery, the weather held, it was a nice day. So that was went well, and thanks to her for coming all the way. And then we've had a tricky time, as you know, the last 4 or 5 years with the planning service, but I just want to say that we've turned a major corner, and we've got 99% planning applications are being determined in the statutory or agreed timescales, and I would like to take this opportunity of formally thanking the planning team for all the efforts to turn that corner as fast as they did. And then we've got a video to show you.
At the heart of our plan is to help nature bounce back, tackle climate change and inspire people to enjoy this amazing landscape.
We're working with Exmoor National Park Authority to address the climate crisis head on. We're restoring peatlands, enhancing woodlands and cutting emissions.
It's about connecting habitats, restoring biodiversity and helping wildlife to thrive, from the tiniest pollinators to birds and mammals.
Healthy nature means healthy people. We want to safeguard Exmoor's soil, water and air, the lifeblood of our ecosystems and communities.
Exmoor's story is written in its landscape, so we care for its heritage, its rare species and of course its beautiful night skies.
Let's make it a welcoming place for all, improving access, promoting well-being and encouraging tourism that gives back.
From moor to coast, every part of Exmoor matters. Upland farmers play a vital role in conserving the environment, landscape and culture of Exmoor.
The National Park Management Plan needs our partners to work together in collaboration to achieve the ambitions contained in it. Thanks to all our partners who've helped us get as far as we have, we've got a really amazing future ahead of us with everybody working together.
So the video went out at the partnership plan. She sent it to the guy from Devon County Council, because obviously I know him, and I said, because he couldn't make it, so thank you so much for coming and doing a bit of video. And he straight away came back, it was so nice, and he said, we are the easiest partners to work with, and it was a pleasure to get involved. And I thought, well, that was just an unsolicited comment, that was so nice, so he just came straight back with that, that was Doug. So he came straight back with that, because I thought you won't have seen the video. Oh, there's another one. You're going to see another one as well. Gosh.
The Exmoor National Park Management Plan has ambitious targets for nature, people, climate mitigation. It's about working in partnership with our many businesses, farmers, landowners and all the people who love and care for Exmoor to celebrate this beautiful landscape.
We're investing in nature-based climate solutions. Peatland restoration locks carbon into the soil, while targeted tree planting in flood-prone areas helps mitigate extreme weather.
It's all about working with natural process. What we look to do here is reverse the impacts of historical drainage and create wetland habitat. And within that, there'll be wider benefits, be that for people or for nature.
Bringing back lost species, bold ambitions that make a real contribution to our national 30 by 30 targets, such as our project to reintroduce pine martens.
At the same time, we're sharing best practices and knowledge on managing our iconic heritage wildlife, like the red deer and the Exmoor pony.
We have big ambitions to increase tree and woodland cover on Exmoor, but it's really important that we get that increase delivered properly to maximise the opportunities for nature recovery, for the economy, for access and understanding, and getting trees and woodlands in the right place and getting our woods in good condition.
Extreme weather events are causing quite a lot of issues across the national park, washing out paths, tree damage, greater risk of wildfires. When we do repair and build things, we need to build them to a higher specification. We're working on an active travel project across Exmoor, looking at new opportunities for people to get around without the car.
We want everyone to enjoy Exmoor. No matter their ability or their background, we want everyone to be able to experience a special landscape. And we know that getting out and active is really positive for your health and well-being.
Being in nature improves our mental health, it reduces our stress and reduces the impact on the NHS. We provide free events for those on limited incomes, we provide transport for people to come out to Exmoor, and we try and provide accessible events as well for people who may have limited mobility.
Volunteering provides real benefits and opportunities, so we have things like river and stream restoration work, practical conservation, as you can see going on at our tree nursery here today. We have wildlife surveys of protected and rare species, woodland restoration, woodland enhancement work. You can gain practical skills, you can chat with people who are really knowledgeable about these areas, and you can learn absolutely loads that you can take on for whatever career or for whatever interest you decide to pursue in your life.
Exmoor's status as an international dark sky reserve is something really special. We offer amazing activities to help people learn and engage in the protection of our super starry skies and our nocturnal environment for our wildlife.
There are over 10,000 archaeological sites and monuments here on Exmoor, mapped and recorded in our historic environment record. It helps us safeguard them for the future, as well as investigate past farming practices which may be helpful in understanding landscape management.
We're making events and programmes available to share knowledge and upskill the next generation, ensuring that young people have a voice and a valuable contribution to a sustainable Exmoor.
Our aim is to support young residents and workers to make Exmoor a place where they can thrive.
Exmoor's rural economy is dominated by micro businesses, primarily in the tourism and agricultural sectors. We're supporting businesses to be more sustainable to help keep this landscape alive, so working with partners on a good tourism plan, ensuring that tourism on Exmoor is good not only for our visitors and our businesses, but also for our landscapes and our communities.
We can't do any of this alone. We've got to work together, we've got to work in partnership to create greener, wilder national parks and thriving local communities.
Lovely, thank you. So that's both the videos, so you've seen it all now. If you'd like a copy, I think they are on YouTube, aren't they? Your website. So, yeah, well, I do have a look if you want to pass them on. I think they're very easy to share. Right, go back to the agenda. So, item 4 is the minutes of the last meeting. Could I have that? Need not do the microphone now. Can I have somebody to propose something? Thank you, Dominic. Do you want Andrew? Thank you. All those in favour? And as usual, we'll go through each page. Page 1, page 2, page 3. Dominic.
Yeah, no, just to raise the issue when we talked about revenue raising strategy, and there was a point on that was about the issue I raised about clearing rights of way, and said CA officers would provide a written response. They did. I got it, I think, last week, and presumably went to all members. Just say it was a really helpful response. And just to say that I think it's something that we don't need to discuss now, but it's something we could perhaps come back to at some point to not necessarily review that decision, which would make total sense, but more about the way it's being communicated, and maybe helping landowners understand that actually this is part of the service that's being done, because as we hear later, if there is more pressure on our expenditure, then this is something that may come back into focus again. So I think it's something that was probably worth bringing to the surface. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Page 4. Thank you. Item 5, business of oversea. I have nothing I've been notified of. Item 6, we have no public speakers. So over to item 7, and it is going to be rather the Ben Roadshow, but it's revised medium-term financial plan.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, members. First, I'll take this report as read. I'll just raise out some salient points from each of the sections. So I appreciate it's quite a weighty term for you. So the main purpose of this report is for you as members to approve the revised medium-term financial plan, 25-26, 29-30, and also to adopt the revenue budget. But there is actually quite a lot involved in this. We've got the first 6 months of the year financial performance. We've got a revision to our budgets, to our capital programme, to our partnerships and our reserves. We've got a review of the exceptional capital spend or capital allocation that we've been provided with. And we've also got the updated medium-term financial plan. So the main context around this is back in May, you'll recall that I came to you with a reduction of funding, and in the reduction of funding that DEFRA applied to us of 8.2%, just over £250,000. But that was matched by an offsetting capital allocation and an increased capital allocation of about £1.4 million spent in the year. So we reprofiled our budgets early in the year. We used a mixture of reserves and other allocations to meet that cost without actually impacting our staff base at the time. What's presented in front of you this morning is a revised budget that totals 6.1 million. And that's met by just under 3 million, 2.968 of National Park grant from DEFRA, and just over 3.1 million of additional income, as we've discussed and discussed last time in terms of our income generation abilities. So first of all, financial performance for the first 6 months. The Appendix 1 shows you a negative variance of just over £300,000. Whilst that's sizable, I'm not concerned at this stage. You'll note from the report that most of those are timing issues. We're currently changing over finance systems, and the new finance system gives us the ability to actually profile our budget in a much more coherent way. There's also a large increase in our project activity from the Heart of Exmoor Landscape Recovery Project, the Heritage Lottery Exmoor Pioneers Project, River Vale Restoration, and also in terms of our estate strategy and the ongoing work our estates are doing around the scenes, CS, etc. Appendix 2 looks like revised full budget and the amendments to that. Pleased to say that we're still meeting our statutory requirement for a balanced budget, and there's no real change in the overall revenue budget. Have taken the opportunity to make adjustments across service areas. So it's quite an intense period during October. We review our first 6 months of activity. We look at our staffing budgets, which is our major area of spend. We profile forwards. We look at future potential and future risks and issues. By far the biggest element of work here is around our capital programme. So that's Appendix 4. As I mentioned, we had the additional 1.4 million of DEFRA capital. In May, we put forward a set of 25 schemes, which totaled £1.9 million, so obviously in excess of the allocation. But they were put together in a matter of a couple of weeks with officers estimating what we would like to spend in these areas. And they're all to meet kind of DEFRA key government key objectives: 30 by 30, net recovery, income generation, spend to save. So Appendix 4 provides you an update on where we are. Members also had an informal meeting on this in terms of reviewing the likely trajectory on the projects. In the paper, I'm also putting forward a long list as well. It is by no means a sizable task, this capital spend, on a reducing revenue resource base, with staff members who are already pretty fully committed in their own roles. This is a side desk job that has been turned into something quite monumental. So the risks with the consents that need to be obtained, with the procurement process with New Procurement Act 23, with our planning and listed building elements, we are seeing a spend profile that is inevitably pushed towards the end of the year. So there is an increasing risk that projects may not be delivered, or may not be delivered by the 31st of March, when the funding is due to be sent back to DEFRA. We've also got the issue that we don't know about continued funding in coming years. We are hearing different music from DEFRA and the government. So at this stage, it's a lucky guess as to whether we will receive more capital next year. The reason for the extended list in Appendix 4 is that should we not succeed to spend all this on the specific schemes in the year, this list gives us the opportunity to fall back to areas which are still required, still need to be spent, but actually are easier to spend within it before the end of the financial year. The other benefit is if we are given a capital allocation in 26-27, the 3-year period beyond, then these schemes are there, they have approval, we can then move forwards and actually plan properly to deliver them in an appropriate way, rather than in a rushed and forced way. So that's why I want to kind of labour on those in a touch here. But again, we have these delivery risks, the procurement, the consent, the timing. It really does have an impact on these projects. Appendix 5 gives you a breakdown of our reserves. My aim is to maintain the general fund, so the general fund contingency reserve, at a level of around £550,000. This projection continues doing so. And we have a projected balance at the end of this financial year, 31st of March 26, of around 3.2 million. That includes some legacies, includes a legal contingency as well. And the final appendix, Appendix 6, is a review of our medium-term financial plan. You'll notice that we have worsening projections for the years 2026-27 onwards. From 42,000 roughly, we are increasing to around the £130,000 deficit position projected currently. It is inevitable with a national park grant that's reduced in year and assumptions of continuing that at that same level, nil growth or negative growth in real terms. Yet we are looking at our staff base of around £3 to £3.5 million. If we're increasing that by 3%, we are looking at £100,000 cost just built in there alone year on year. So it is quite a stark position. We've got a reasonable level of reserves that we will seek to use in the first instance if we have a further cut in the coming years. But we are in a relatively sound position in our position amongst national parks and as a local authority itself. So we have mitigations, we've got savings, we have the income generation policy, we've got a reasonable estate and our estate management facilities, and our external funding is being actively looked at. There are risks of further grant reductions, risks of stubborn inflation. The liabilities, you have a paper later, which is the business continuity disaster recovery. So that talks about our risk management. But these are all factors that play on us and that we have to consider as the leadership team as an authority. But to kind of come away from the temporary sobriety on this, we have a robust, realistic estimate for a budget. We have a balanced budget. I've assessed our reserves as being adequate at this point in time, and we are resourced to meet our challenges that lay ahead. We will continue to monitor savings where they arise, income opportunities where they arise. We will continue to monitor our financial health, and we will seek to maintain effective stewardship as far as we can. And that's essentially my report to you members this morning.
Thank you. Fran.
Thank you. I'm going to hone in on the reds and the ambers, obviously, because that's quite often what we do when we check and look at the financial status. A lot of the driver plans that we were hoping to achieve, they're marked as red, and I just wonder why they weren't amber, because are you not intending, was this not intended to be done this financial year, and that's why they're red? Because I noticed for the Bossy that the radar station, we haven't progressed that one, but that's only amber. So is that supposed to be done this year? Or could you just explain the difference between the red and the amber?
Yes. I mean, the amber, it is likely that we will have one bobby this year. The red, due to the size and scale of that project, we are not going to complete that project by the end of March 26. We will be able to complete elements, we will get certain procedures and strategies and procurements in place, but we will not be able to complete that project in its entirety.
Can I just, sorry.
Yeah.
So I mean, we don't know how we're going to be financially next year, you know, with what funding we do get in. Would that put any of this in jeopardy, or can these budgets be carried across to the following year? Have we got that in our plan? Thank you.
Thank you. The CDL budget we cannot carry across to future years. If we do not spend that CDL, spend it properly, it goes back to DEFRA. What we do have is other resource that we can use to complete these projects. So we have land sales, we have a capital development reserve, that we can use those reserves to complete these projects in a timescale that is appropriate.
Okay. Thank you. Ethan.
Thank you, Chairman. How sure are we of the projected income for the revised budget this year, for the rest of this year?
I'd say pretty is not a very good word. I'd say 90% realistic assumption on that. For most of our project funding, that is mostly assured. Our National Park Centre income is slightly below our budget, but it's still up in terms of long-term trend. Our car parking is looking good. Planning income after a 2-year low has kind of increased again. So the signs are pretty good for most of our kind of external earned income at this stage in the year.
Thank you very much. I think it gets ever more challenging to actually read and understand the budget when you've got those large number of projects. So just a couple of questions. Firstly, understanding that risk around 50% of our income only now comes from DEFRA. So that for me is a huge risk, especially when FIPL moving forward. I think that's a massive risk. And I understand that the councils have the same risk, but to mitigate it, I think it's really challenging. Second question is around spreading your budget throughout the year. I'm just wondering with the new software whether we can get more accurate on that, because every budget will have times of the year where it'll be overspent and then it'll level out often towards the rest. I'm just wondering if there's anything that can be done with that to sort of more accurately reflect the year's spend. And again, I know that's difficult with project work. And also with the reserve, to me, the reserves have gone down by quite a figure from, if you look, start of year to close of year, which is, again, would expect if it's project based. So for me, it was understanding those reserves, which ones are connected specifically to projects, so you'd expect them to go, and which ones aren't. Because I think moving forward, we'll look ever more closely at the reserves as a fallback position to mitigate risk. So, and the other thing that would be really helpful is probably something that covers the last 4 or 5 years, just a little chart to see whether overall we're staying steady or whether there's a sort of decline sort of year on year on year that's propping the budget. Some comments, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, so National Park grants are around 50% of our total income. In the past, this was around 75%, so we've actually done quite a lot to mitigate this issue. It will be quite perennial for us. We are actively seeking to increase external income generated, but on that sizable nature, we won't be able to do it. We won't be able to meet the 50% by DEFRA, so we will need some sort of support. There is a baseline figure of what an authority needs to run, provided by its partner body. In terms of the budget question, yes, I mean, I did mention that our new finance system does allow us to actually profile the budget in a much more meaningful way. So our previous system was quite clunky in that respect. We only had a 12th budget, but this one allows us to put a manner of different permutations in there. So for our national park centres, we can look at our staffing and income profiles. For our car parking, we can do the same. We can look at one-off, seasonal, etc. So that is fully in the new system, and we just start to explore and develop that and implement that as we speak. You've kind of hit the nail on the head with a hammer in terms of reserves. We are, as a leadership team, actually looking at each of those reserves and seeing what it's there for. Is it required? Could it be used if we do need to use reserves for specific purposes or actions? So they all have names, they all are required for certain aspects. There are some that are, I suppose in charity terms, restricted, used only for one purpose, but by and large they are available as a resource to us to mitigate any future issues. And I'm quite happy to put together a chart showing the level of reserves and the type of reserves over the last 5 years, and kind of give you a trend on that one.
Thank you. Laura.
Thank you. I'm just looking at Appendix 6, and I know how you've broken down fees for planning and car parks. I just wondered if it would be of value to break down the grants and contributions bit, because I'm assuming that includes Claremore, legacies, as well as FIPL and things like that. It might just be helpful to understand legacies, for example, can fluctuate significantly, and you can't predict growth on those in the same way you can with the individual contributions. So just ask if there was a way we could drill into that a bit more. Thanks.
Thank you. That's a really good observation there. Because actually last year when we brought a lot of the project funding in, that was the kind of the main incoming line, and I appreciate it's just one liner. So yeah, we can certainly do some work on that. In terms of legacies, they are few and far between, but they can be quite sizable when they do come in. So I appreciate there may be some kind of categorisation that could be done on that to indicate grants that are sought, grants that are direct offers, such as FIPL, biodiversity net gain, etc. And then contributions and legacy. So yeah, I appreciate that. That's
thank you.
Useful comment, thank you.
Francis.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This is a very tiny thing, and I want to endorse what everybody says, the difficulties of running a budget like this so tightly, the work that's gone into it, the work that everybody is doing to manage a big capital programme with no revenue attached, etc., etc., etc. So all of that. But this is just a very, very tiny question, which I don't think then is actually for you. It's just that this afternoon, as we are, this afternoon in another committee, we will be looking at a battery storage application from one of the providers. And in this paper, we've been having a meeting with a potential supplier for a battery storage thing for ourselves. And just in terms of transparency, we ought to note that we are thinking in these terms ourselves, as well as looking at other people's planning applications.
Okay, thank you. And I want to obviously that's not too happy, isn't it? Mike.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Right. Thank you. It's obviously a very important report, this. It's quite sobering as well, isn't it? In terms of the budget variances, it seems that it's down to timing, and the countryside stewardship income, when it comes in, will probably address any concerns generally. So thank you for that. I think in terms of the risk analysis, however, looking at 9.1, we've got the National Park Grant. Likelihood of it being reduced is high, and the impact would be high, but you have got as a mitigating factor, some notice will be provided of future funding reductions. This could be key. Are you able to provide any further information about that particular note? Thank you.
Only that the amount of notice is reducing as we sit here. In essence, we are at the mercy of the government. Obviously, got the upcoming budget, budget. We have then the departmental spending discussions that happen. So we are potentially, there is a slim possibility we will find out before Christmas, but we've been in this situation before.
Yes, I mean, sorry, again, obviously the earlier notice the better, because that's going to have an impact in terms of our capital projects and a lot of the other information in this budget. So can we, in this report, so how can we encourage an early discussion in that respect?
I think on that, I don't know if Sarah wants to come on this, but all national parks are in the same position and are having the same discussions with MPE and our DEFRA leads, and they know the key importance of this as we speak. Sorry, Sarah, do you want to?
Just to reinforce what you said, Ben, there's obviously been a lot of discussion going on between the national parks on this issue. I know some of the senior DACRA officials have been visiting national parks in recent weeks, and we are getting messages that they're doing everything they can to get the information to us by Christmas. That's their hope, that's what they're trying to do.
Andy.
Thank you, Ben. Obviously you've done a lot of work and continue to do a lot of work in challenging ourselves for these capital projects. But what's really coming out for me looking at these figures, and we touched on it in the last meeting, we talked about commercial thinking. There's so much project working going on now, and the delay in those receiving payments, whether it be stewardship payments or going forward DEFRA payments, it's going to have a massive impact on your figures, but it's beyond your control, I would say. Or, maybe this is a good bit, when we say timing issues on stewardship scheme payments, was that planned, i.e. cash flow, and we knew it was going to happen? Because, for example, capital stewardship payments can be delayed massively if we have to remap the field versus taking a photograph. And that's where I think the commercial thinking, people doing that need to realise, going out taking a photograph of a tree and then uploading it impacts cash flow. So I think there's a bit of commercial training there, realising the impact of those things. So first question would be around, are we aware of these times going forward on those delayed stewardship payments, or have they just happened and no one really had predicted the income? Because when you put on top of that the DEFRA capital projects, if they get delayed and then we don't get the money in, and you add up all that cash flow and all the negative, they're going to be big figures. I mean, drivers 300,000. If we think we're going to get £150,000 worth done, 150 might have to come from elsewhere. So my question around that is two things. One is around the cash flow, and are we really clear on the criteria which triggers the payment? I did some work at Cambridge University where they bring in all their funding. And a key task they had was making sure everyone understood the criteria they had to achieve to make sure they got the funding in. Then you could set up a decent cash flow plan saying we've got to do this, whether it's photographs or it's remapping or whatever the decorate. So they could build that in and know, and then when you put the cash flows on top of each other, you can see the impact. So the question is, are you comfortable about the cash flows going forward and people doing that, and the criteria for payments are clear? It's probably not for you, but in one sense, you're overseeing the management and the risk of it. So.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. I am comfortable in terms of the overall cash flows. You'll see the next paper is Treasury Management. You'll see we have a approximate average balance of about 3.5 million continue through the year. I wouldn't say that CS is planned. We are aware of when it comes in. The work that needs to happen at certain times of the year. So we take the risk of the hit on our kind of cash flow of that work happening in advance of the CS receipts. So we are aware of that. We don't really plan it as such. One of the benefits of the CDAL situation for us has been that DEFRA has issued quarterly amounts of that CDAL to us, and our spend profile has very much been towards the back end of the year because as I mentioned earlier, we've had to receive consents, get the project plan in place. So we're currently benefiting from investing that surplus allocation until it's used. So we find, looking at overall cash flow management basis, we are more cash rich currently. That obviously has a risk in latter years of the plan because we assume a level of interest receipts. If the capital projects aren't there, if our reserves reduce, if the interest rates reduce, our interest income is going to go down. So that's obviously built into the risk side of this. But yes, I do quite a lot of work on cash flow management throughout the year.
Thank you. And then Robin.
Right. Thank you. Andrew, well, first of all, I'd like to move the recommendations, which I don't think you need to reply to, Ben. Secondly, just to note thanks to you. There's a huge amount of work that's gone on here, and quite a lot of that unprecedented work because of that capital nature that has been landed on you, that is unexpected. That obviously has an impact on your staff, your team, and the amount of time that they have to put towards developing what is a relatively short-term capital spend. And is that actually taking away from some of the longer-term planning, or are you just managing to find time within your system there? Is kind of one question, because it's bound to put everyone under some pressure. And the other thing is, just from my point of view, what this is highlighting is the fact that the underlying core DEFRA grant that keeps the National Park Authority running is still effectively diminishing. And you can't get away from that increasing risk that is going to be placed year on year on the authority in waiting for that opportunity for capital spend that keeps things happening, whilst trying to keep the authority itself running at a level enough that there's capacity to deal with capital spend when it arrives. And do you think that's sustainable at the moment in that way? Or do we need to be pressing even back again? It's fine the capital spend, there's still got to be an understanding the core budget is absolutely vital.
Thank you, Robin. On the first one, thank you, but I am just a very small cog in this lovely family machine that is the National Park Authority. There are many others that are doing a lot more than I in terms of these capital projects, and yes, there are very stretched people here. We've had a recent staff survey which we've seen signs of that stress coming through, which is not ideal. We have it as a key part of our risk management a bit later this morning. So there are signs. It is difficult to manage. We are seeking to address that, but it is difficult when we've got a single year settlement. So hopefully with some sort of certainty over the following 3 years we can then plan accordingly. The second element of that, frankly, no, it's not sustainable, really. We want to maintain what we're doing. We have a wonderful management plan we have just launched with a set of targets in there. We want to deliver the government's agenda in this area. But as National Park decreases, we will have to come to a point where we have to do something. In the short term, we have large level reserves that can meet that, but ultimately, if the kind of medium to long term projections are more serious, then we'll have to undertake another business review and look at the way we do things again. That is inevitably.
Just one bit to add on there. I'm just pleased to say as well, you sound reasonably optimistic that you can likely hear settlements before Christmas. I'm probably a little more pessimistic on that one, having gone in and out of DEFRA recently and seeing the slope-like speed at which they're working, or rather the completely disconnected way in which they're working at the moment. Seem to be spending their entire time briefing new ministers and not actually doing very much. What would be the net impact if those announcements don't come until quite a bit later?
It's difficult to quantify that. I mean, for us, we would continue as we are currently continuing. So we would plan a budget. I'll bring a budget to you in March, as I have done and my predecessor year on year. We will seek to continue the operations of the management plan and corporate plan. We would mitigate any in-year reductions using reserves as a first instance. That's as best I can answer your problem, really.
Thanks, Ben.
Mandy, you want to come back?
Thank you. Sorry for the comeback. Just adding on and following on from that, I think for any organisation to expect to pull a budget together within 12 weeks of it starting is utter lunacy. I just don't think it needs the best use of public money, and I will keep saying that. I think it's valid and the best decisions are made when they're in a timely manner, and you've got to get it through the system, through the meetings, through members, and I think it's incredibly difficult to do that in an efficient way. But just picking up on the one comment, I think, following a question earlier about the grant money that's got to be spent, it's not spent, it goes back. My question is, is there anything the authority can do, even if it means some extra help coming in, to spend the grant as opposed to it coming from our money? Because every penny we keep in our money can go towards the next project, so it's just a bit of a sense check on if we're doing everything that we physically can to get it spent and not send it back.
Ben, we're all talking about this.
Just to refer back to Appendix 4, we've got the secondary list. I think at this moment in time, that's our best effort to be able to make full use of that National Park grant for, capital allocation for National Park purposes. It's the acknowledgement that the staff can only work as well as they can on these areas. They can plan as best they can. That sub-list on 4 is our best effort and be able to spend the full amount of that allocation.
So we've just got a quarter left in reality. We've got Christmas, New Year in amongst that. So I suppose the challenge is have you got all the tools you need to enable that to happen? I suppose that's slightly rephrasing the question.
Yes, I mean the ultimate fallback will be purchasing of equipment, and there is such as field services and forestry equipment around 200,000 there that could be bought as a whole or bought in parts. So we have got access to several purchasing frameworks that are allowed under the Procurement Act. My answer is I believe we'll be able to spend the full allocation in 25-26.
Thank you. Sorry to ask it again, but I think it's quite an important thing to know and understand.
So I can say that every national park has had these conversations over and over again. We're all in the same boat. And suddenly says, well, I hate being cynical, but I do wonder whether that wasn't the game plan all the way along. Is that it's just impossible to spend enough. I don't know. I've noticed you're there, but I thought, Bill next.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, Ben. Just a question on risk analysis. You're obviously absolutely confident that all the spending areas for the capital projects are going to be okay by DEFRA, because it doesn't appear in the risk analysis as being a risk. I mean, why are you so confident? Have you spoken to DEFRA on the individual areas, or is it just based on the letter that they sent of what would be suitable?
We have had several conversations with other national park authorities and DEFRA, as well as also a joint DEFRA SITFA meeting. We've also sought further clarification from DEFRA as we've gone along with specific projects. So yeah, I have confidence on that.
And then Mike, please.
Well, simply, Chair, I mean, you do wonder about the government stated support of national parks and then its unwillingness, its reluctance to actually support that ambition. And, you know, it's puzzling, isn't it? But having said that, I'm quite happy to second what's being put forward.
I was going to say, can I have a second? You did it for me, thank you. Fran.
Thank you. I'm glad that Mandy came back about the handing back the funding. I really hate doing that. I think there should be a way of spending it on something. So can we perhaps have an update, because there is a short space of time to get this money out? Could we have an update at our next meeting so that we kind of know, have you managed to do this? Have you looked at the secondary list of what you could spend the money on, so that we know? Because otherwise, will it come to, well, we don't have a meeting in January, will it be February, and then you'll be saying, sorry, we didn't spend it and it's all got to go back, and we'll all be disappointed. So I think we probably need some kind of, please don't get to send the money back.
No, I mean,
it's my plea.
I appreciate the reporting deadlines are challenging.
Yeah.
You know, we look at 18th of November for the December committee deadline. That's a week and a half away.
Sorry to interrupt, but if you could just send out something by email, please. I don't want to see another report on the agenda. It creates too much work.
Thank you, Chairman.
Right. You've got too much to do, so by all means, do send out an update by email, but that's it. Thank you. Sorry, I'm having to be really strict because these reports take an awful lot of staff time to do, and we've got to somehow cut down what we do, and that's my start of it. Right. Anybody else? Anybody I've missed? If I have, I apologise. Brilliant. So we've got a proposer and a seconder. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. Thank you very much. I hate to tell you this, but you're not leaving the seat. So we've now got item 8. Treasury Management this year report, please.
Thank you, Chairman and members, for that previous report. We as an authority receive reports on treasury management activities on 3 occasions through the year. In advance of the financial year, setting the policies, there are strategies determined. A mid-year review is conducted today, and then a final report is delivered at the end of the financial year. So item 8 on today's agenda provides a mid-year update on our treasury management activity and investment strategies. It's a requirement of the SIPA Treasury Management Code 2021, Prudential Code 2021, and the revised 2003 Local Government Act. So whilst it's a report to note, it is actually a statutory requirement that you receive regular updates on treasury management. And it concerns the circumstances where the authority could borrow and where funding would be sought from. So by and large, as a debt-free authority, there's a lot of detail here, but actually it doesn't mean a lot to us because we aren't borrowing. But it is there in case we do need to go down that route at some point in the future. We are debt-free and have investments deposits with Somerset Council that currently stand at around £3 million. We benefit greatly from a service level agreement with Somerset Council to manage these investments. It's free from significant risk, and the report also describes the management and the process by which the counterparties are agreed on. Somerset Council assume the risk on our behalf to the capital of the counterparty, so that's the default, that we would lose any interest were one of their counterparties to go under. And the real, kind of the most important aspect of the report in some ways for us is that we've, over the first 6 months, we've had just over £77,000 of interest income to us. That compares pretty well with last year's, which was £84,000 on a higher interest rate. And Somerset are performing well in terms of their treasury management activities. We had an average balance throughout the first 6 months of the year of £3.61 million, and that received interest at an average rate of 4.26%. And if you compare that with SONIA, which is the interbank lending rate, which is 4.13%, the Somerset arrangements are delivering above that percentage rate. And essentially the paper is there for your information and the recommendations you know in that paper.
Bill.
Chairman, I'd like to propose that we accept the recommendation.
Thank you. We're only meeting, so that's all very factual.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Anybody want to ask any questions? This is all very self-explanatory report. All those in favour? Oh, Bill, oh,
Oh,
sorry.
Lee.
Lee wants to ask a
Can I ask
question.
one quick one? Thank you,
Yeah,
Chair.
sorry, we have approved it, by the way, but...
Yeah, no. No, just very quick. It's reassuring, Ben, thanks ever so much that I see you use Arling Close Financial Advisors via Somerset Council, which is very reassuring, and I know they've done, Somerset Council, a good job. How much interaction do you have with the decisions that you personally, or Exmoor, have with the decisions that are made by Somerset County and Arling Close? Do you have any involvement in that, or is it just left purely to Somerset and Arling Close? Thank you, Chair.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Ben?
Yeah, it's pretty much purely left to Somerset Council. In the policy and in the start of the year, we agreed what the council party policy is, and then we give take assurance that the experts in the county and on the I haven't, whilst I have some qualification on this, I haven't got the ability or time to really push this in a coherent manner.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And now we're going on to item 9, which is about risk management. This came up at our conference we went to, didn't it, Ben?
It did indeed. It did indeed.
I wish I could remember what the 5 points were. I wrote them down, but I don't know where I wrote them down. Right, over to you.
Thank you, Jim. Thankfully for yourself, this will be the last time I'm presenting to you this morning. The report reviews the risk management arrangements for the authority. The recommendations are to note the annual review of risk management has taken place, to approve our health, safety and welfare policy, to approve the risk management policy and strategy, the strategic risk register and review of the heat map, to approve, and to note that review of BCDR, business continuity and disaster recovery, has taken place. You will be aware that we had a root and branch review of our risk management arrangements last year, 24-25, and that's conducted by Devon Assurance Partnership, our internal audit provider. That review included training sessions to our leadership team, delivery teams and other key staff, and resulted in this new risk management strategy and policy being developed. So it intends this to an annual refresh. Risk management aims to protect our service delivery, protect our image, our reputation, our assets, our funding and income sources, the well-being of our employees, and also users of our service. It ensures integrity and resilience of information systems, ensures we continue to act in probity with sound ethical conduct, and seek to avoid criminal prosecution or civil litigation. We have a number of measures in place to protect against risks. We have a strong health and safety culture. We update our risk assessments regularly, and we include various policies. So if I just run through you the key areas of current position. Health and safety, we've got a strong culture, open reporting, investigation of incidents. Risk assessments, we've got an online system in place. Things such as fire and legionella risk assessments are updated regularly. We have an EDI strategy, which is approved. We have 5 new corporate values that have been communicated. We seek to improve well-being. We're a mindful employment plus service. We updated our bullying harassment policies and menopause at work policy, and we have ongoing mental health training. Our financial management, which we discussed reasonably late this morning, we have regular audits, perhaps too overbearing at times. We have program management strategy we've just approved, our medium-term financial planning, and our budget monitoring. For governance, we have the annual governance statements, our code of corporate governance, and our audit results as well. We have a competent insurance policy in place, or a range of insurance policies in place. I have regular reviews with both our broker and our main provider. We also liaise with other national park authorities on the insurance elements. We have a strong performance management culture. Next month you'll see our progress at the corporate strategy and corporate plans. For property and safety, we undertake regular condition surveys. We have safety plans. We commission independent risk surveys where they're required. We have a project management framework in place for project delivery. We have a standards committee that oversees our conduct. We are involving members in regular training as well. And we have a business continuity plan in place, disaster recovery for ICT, premises, staff loss. So that's all the elements we have in place to support us. We have key risks, we have key challenges, and you'll notice in the report there are some elements that have crept up and crept on for the first time. Financial is our, as we've discussed, highest risk ones. The highest risk due to the reduced National Park grant, the 8.2% cut we've had in the year. The uncertainty over DEPA funding, the long-term financial pressures. We've had this discussed at length this morning. We have a key risk around our staffing. Recruitment, retention of skilled staff is challenging, especially when the uncertainty of the future is there and the pressure of these additional capital projects is there. This does impact service delivery, it does impact project execution. Climate response has jumped up onto our strategic risk register in a more formal way. The risks relating to our carbon reduction targets, but I suppose more imminently the impacts of climate change, the impacts on our services, the fire, the flood type issues. And then we've also got a risk around our contractors. The high demand, limited access to expertise, the complications of procurement and consents. So these risks are in a sense mitigated by our policy, our strategy, our review as a leadership team and a delivery team of managers. And that all comes together in this risk management policy that's set before you this morning. Breath 10, apologies.
Are you all right?
Yeah, so let's get some more water.
Think what can you get it from?
Apologies.
Right, members, over to you. Mandy.
Thank you for the policy. I think it's really important that risk sort of filters through the whole organisation and everybody, I suppose, takes it on board, and it's also there as part of our papers and in particular budget papers, and needs to be a strong sort of element of risk within that. So if I just look at the very, very top risk we've got here, which is funding risk, failure of DEPA grant, and you've actually got that as likelihood, very likely. Well, I hope it's not very likely. I'm living in hope that it's not going to sort of all fall away, risk of failure, and I don't know if that is very likely. So I'm just picking that out as one. It's just when you put your risk there and put it down, you know, hopefully it might not be quite as bad as we're hoping. Moving on, throughout the report when I read it all through, it talks in different places of how often the risks are going to be reported. In some places it says quarterly, in some places it sort of says periodically, so it's just understanding when that's going to be coming back. And the last question is around risk appetite. There's not a huge amount in the paper about risk appetite, but again, moving forward, that might be a members' session or something on the appetite for risk, and that will depend on which risk you're looking at. So there might be, following on from this and this getting embedded, the appetite for different risk in different areas of your starting might be another conversation moving forward.
Ken.
Thank you. Yeah, I suppose it's a mixture of failure and reduction in our national park grant. It remains a key fundamental risk for us. On the same lines.
I'm being pedantic, but you know, you're putting it down on paper, yeah, and you've put it through a risk matrix, so it's just the wording that you put there actually. Yeah. Well, two different things in that one risk.
Well, no, what it says is funding risk, failure of DEPA grants, significant cut of greater than 5% is defined as. We've had a reduction of 8% this year, so in fact that very likely has materialised in 24-25. Sorry, 25-26 for us. The second one, timing. It's, I appreciate that. You'll see reports from our external auditors in December, which has a recommendation that members actually see risk management at least twice a year. And following on to your third comment, I'd very welcome a kind of a members' forum session on risk appetite, either looking at risk as a whole or specific areas. So our top three strategic risks. It would be invaluable having your input into that. We regularly review this kind of staff teams, but it does need to bridge the gap between staff and members, and yeah, very much welcome that suggestion.
Thank you, Chair. I'll leave that with you.
Yeah, we can certainly find a stop on that. Thank you. Marcus.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, actually, it's probably more detail on the report, more information, I suppose. The first one I looked at, we talked about insurance and, I went, well, the question I suppose I had was, one, do we have many claims? Is there anything, apart from sort of someone reverses a car into a lamppost or something? But I suppose the second one we talked about, we're sort of in along with the other national park authorities, is that a I mean, are we then at risk of, if one of the other national parks maybe has a big claim because of their systems have broken down, we're in danger of paying more because of something we've actually got no control of? I suppose that's the question on that side. I was interested on the ransomware thing as well, as because obviously a bit naive at things like this. But I wonder, actually, I assume we're vulnerable, but actually, have we got systems that actually, if they wanted to close our computer systems down, would it be that hard? Would it be that hard to, just say, okay, then we'll get on and create a new one? And then another one, it's only about two small details actually. It's good to know about the digitising of documents. That's a utopia that people have been trying to do for 20 years, I suppose. But then it says if we do have documents, they're kept in different premises. I'm just wondering what sort of documents the National Park would have that it couldn't digitise. I know science is sort of question what would there be. And really pleased to know about the staff welfare issue. And I bang on about this in another place, but seem to get very, very little, nowhere with it. But does that extend to members when it comes to the welfare? Thank you.
Thank you. I think you have to come to me if you want to talk to somebody about your welfare. I'm not absolutely certain, but I'm sure I'm available at the end of the month. Ben.
Thank you. In terms of our claims history, I don't want to say the word, but we have had limited claims over the last 5 years to date. We've got a comprehensive suite of different policies covering different areas. So your employer, public liabilities, motor, financial probity, officers, etc. There are a whole list of insurances. We procure with other national parks, so we're on long-term arrangements with our current provider. If an incident were to happen that was very national park specific, then I'm sure the underwriters of that specific policy would look at it and say, actually, do we need to look at future premiums? As it is, I would say it's more generic, and we're more impacted by global insurance themes currently, and global things the insurers are still looking at. Jumping around cybersecurity, we have at the moment biannual cybersecurity audit as part of our internal audit services. They look at stress testing and reviewing our procedures and process in place. It'd be naive to say we are protected against that, because I don't think anybody is really protected against that in terms of level of risk from hackers and attackers. And sorry, I didn't write down the last couple of questions.
The last one, taking aside the fact that I can go and speak to Andrew with any issues. It was more, I'm just fascinated, if we digitise some documents, what sort of documents would we possibly physically have a document of, rather than just don't like throwing stuff away?
I mean, the largest part of it is historic planning files, which have pretty much all been digitised and scanned. We have a wealth of history. Since before we came free selling quarantine in the 90s, there are various management plans in place, documents that we need to review and archive. So we have got quite a bit. It does need looking at.
Thank you. Laura.
Thank you. I realise this is a live plan, and you're not going to forecast years and years into the future, and it could go on forever if you did lots of the wider risks in society and stuff. But I do wonder if there needs to be a line around policy change. And so we had the recent issue around potential weakening of statutory duties. There's lots of sounds out there about rolling back on net zero should another government get in a few years, which would obviously have a huge impact on all the efforts we've put in here. I know Dorset council have reaffirmed their commitment to that regardless, but other councils are being other authorities have been a bit more cautious to that. And yeah, so I don't know if that needs a separate line in here. And then a tiny one around the ICT. I wonder if we need to consider AI in there, because the systems that staff may use are not necessarily secure. We're being, in the civil service, you're being warned against using it. So just looking at how that could impact sort of security of our information systems. And also the information that people, staff, volunteers, members willingly give out on social media. I don't know if that would come under reputational or under the ICT system bit, but there is a significant risk there, I'd say, especially as society becomes more divided politically. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, I'll take the policy change back to LT and we can discuss that, and whether it sits as a strategic risk or whether it's a component part of many of the risks that we have there, an impact on that. Net zero, again, is very similar. I think my desire to continue that, but it's an approach that needs to be adopted by LT members as a whole. AI, very good point. Both in terms of our use of that, where we do use it, where we accept use of that, where we declare use of that, but also in terms of the risks, again, the cyber side of the AI scams are becoming more and more realistic and lifelike, and it's how we kind of mitigate that. The social media side, we do have kind of acceptable user policies, IT policies to control that from a staffing perspective. But yes, I appreciate that it does present a risk to us, and especially around the reputational side of things.
Thank you. Stephen.
Thank you. This is just a small query, really. Appendix 2 and 3, the risk management policy and strategy. I would have thought that part of the requirement for risk management is to be as open and as transparent as possible, and I note that both of these papers have confidential as a running head right the way through, so I take it that that is an error and that can be removed.
They are, of course, on the public website.
Indeed, and we are discussing them publicly this morning, but they're still headed confidential.
No, that is an error. That confidential mark should have been taken off. That's my error.
Fran, you were next.
Thank you. Mine's probably more of a comment, and it might just be me. But it's Appendix 4, the actual risk register. I find these colours used a bit confusing because, well, under the yellow things are positive, they're low, or they're moderate, and then under the red they could be catastrophic, they could be high, or very likely. I just didn't find that it's not red, amber, green. And I did look at the glossary, but even so, how it was chosen, I just found it a little bit strange, but it might just be me.
Yeah, there is a scoring matrix on page 5 of the strategy, which kind of details that, but I appreciate that it's a combined weighting of the likelihood of impact. Says which risk is where in terms of that colouring, and on the heat map, where it sits as well. But I'll consider that, see if there's any way we can improve that.
Thank you.
Lee, you're next.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks very much. Yeah, it's really good to see a robust, I've written some notes down here, really good to see a robust business continuity plan, Ben, in here. I like the menopause at work policy. I love that you've got that in the bullying and harassment. The incident line for staff, which is great, keeps everybody informed what's going on in the problem. I couldn't see, and I looked all through this the other night, I couldn't see anything relating to I might have missed it, a whistleblowing policy. Is there a whistleblowing policy within that I've missed? Thanks ever so much. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, there is. I think it's right. Thank you. It's not detailed in the report. We do have a whistleblowing policy. Really, review that now.
John.
Thanks. I've got no problem with the report. It's great. Well done. A question about the risk map. Are you content that it adequately reflects the potential risk of a future pandemic? Because you've been through it not that long ago.
It's all
always one. As is obviously evident, it doesn't actually reflect that risk currently.
We'll leave it with you.
Yes, thank you.
You might have had some recent experience.
We could potentially put together a story index quite quickly on that one, yes.
Francis, you're next.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Stephen's had one of my questions, so that one's out of the way. Following on from John, and how about foot and mouth? There are, again, huge amounts of work, very valuable to have, essential to have and to think through. Question, I don't know whether it's appropriate in the health and safety policy. I mean, there's an incident line for information for staff, but I don't know whether it's appropriate here or whether actually it sits somewhere else to say it. In terms of the duties to welfare of staff, there is, I think there is a confidential line that staff can use. We talk about having a duty to their welfare and making sure things are safe and so on. To question, does it sit anywhere in these documents, or actually is it not a sufficiently strategic matter to rate that? And the other question was, it was just a thought. The policies and so on have been developed, and clearly, I'm quite sure, they always develop on what was there before. But we do have on page 3 of the risk management policy, we've got the authority, and it's not a committee, it's the authority. We have it meeting quarterly, and things like it's just I'm sure that's followed on from something in the past. I just wonder whether there's something worth checking on that, because we actually we're meeting 10 times a year, or
Yeah, that specific point refers to the Health and Safety Committee,
right,
which meets on a quarterly basis here, so that's chief
that
executive.
isn't right.
So
It
it's
isn't what it
probably
says.
not very clear in the report. That's page 3 of the policy, as you say.
Yeah, it says through the Exmoor National Park Authority Committee, and I have noticed that people have been talking about the authority meetings as a committee meeting, so hence obviously my confusion.
Yeah.
Maybe if we stop talking about the authority as a committee, it would help, and I wouldn't get confused.
Yeah. I'll clarify that change. As for the first one, we do have a confidential helpline. It's not detailed in that health and safety policy, but I think it's probably due to make reference to that in there.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you.
Andy.
Hi Ben. First a comment on the risk management policy and strategy, and then some specific points on the risk register. The risk management approach, I think, is excellent, and I know we've looked at it briefly before, but we're signing it off now, and I think the idea that staff are trained in it, the more that risk management is talked about, that's got to be a good thing, and people are looking out for that. And I think it's such a simple way when you look at impact and probability. It's so simple and it's so easy to adopt. So I think that's really good. One question I'd like to ask about that is, we know there's going to be a lot of projects and programs being rolled out. Is this being rolled down to project level? Because again, as I talked about the cash flow, saying that projects, you have lots of risk rolling up from the projects, they can create corporate risk. So that was one question. I'll come back to that. And then the second thing was specifically, when you go down through and look at impact, which is obviously the key thing to worry about on risk, you've got one which is catastrophic. There's only one. And that's been reduced down to major, so still quite important. It's the funding risk failure. Obviously that's catastrophic, it's quite a high assessment impact. And you're not reviewing it until the 1st of April. Are you comfortable that that risk, the impact of it has been dealt with fully? I guess we've already been discussing it a little bit. And perhaps you could just talk that through why you're confident that we don't need to review that until the 1st of April, because that's the only one I see catastrophic. If that major goes back to catastrophic, we've already got an issue. And then just a minor point on presentation. I think it's a great presentation, but I think perhaps the colouring could be slightly smaller so we can see the words better, but that's a minor thing. I'm looking at a small screen. So, minor thing. But thank you, Ben. Very good.
Thank you. Sorry, really sorry. Can you repeat the first question?
The first question was, this is great as a project management, risk management strategy. It talks about project management framework, it doesn't mention what that is, and there's no mention about risk management being done at project level?
It is challenging implementing risk management in an authority and trying to seek engagement from all stakeholders. We had a really good year last year. We are trying to keep that embedded in the process, so we are gradually bringing our project staff on board with this. But to date, there has been minor involvement from some of the key project leads. But yes, it is something we want to do. It's something we need to keep the vocabulary in our system and to keep the elements still going. So yes, it is. We're aware of that. We need to do that. They are a key element of our risk matrix. Colouring we can sort out. In terms of the time, the review date is ultimately when we kind of review the risk register as a whole. Were any of these, but we have risk management as a standing item on our leadership team and our delivery team. So if anything were to change during a month, we would then discuss probably the impact on service delivery and the next leadership team, and therefore the impact on risk management accordingly. So I mean the date there is, in a sense, it should be ongoing, as most of these strategic risks are. But it's just a date and time effect on the appendix. But yeah.
Good thing, yeah, I think you're right, ongoing is probably a good one. And going back to the idea of training people in project management and risk, I think it's a way you put it across that it's a very simple process, and it's not rocket science, just the thinking about it up front, and same with commercial thinking, it's just about getting the best value for money. It can seem a bit daunting to some project staff, but it's actually very simple, isn't it?
It's common sense.
Yes.
And it's a part of our normal processes that we just don't see it as risk management, we just see it as a way of delivering projects, but essentially it's the vocabulary.
Yeah. I've been involved in training a lot of people, and when someone says back to you it's common sense, it's the best compliment you can have, isn't it? Because it is just common sense, but it's just a sensible process to go through, so good thing.
Right, Mike, you next.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. We've had a good conversation about this. Just one point, paragraph 2.6 quite rightly says, now, more than ever, it is essential that we concentrate on our key priorities and statutory obligations. I think we'd all agree with that, but at the same time, I think we find ourselves in a cleft stick because we're being encouraged to look at being more entrepreneurial, particularly with the decrease in the depth of grant. So it's putting us all in a very difficult position. But having said all that, very happy with what's been said. I'm quite happy to move the recommendations.
Thank you very much. Evelyn.
Thank you, Chairman. It's just a very minor drafting issue, and I'm happy to second the proposal. But where we're looking at the impact guidance at the bottom of page 5, we define in the catastrophic and the moderate categories that these will have insignificant impact on the ENPA. We don't mention insignificant in the other categories except for insignificant. I'm just wondering whether that word crept in.
That word has crept in, yes.
And whether we could delete it in catastrophic and moderate.
Yes, that word has crept in, thank you very much.
Yeah, I did read it. And it's very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right, I have nobody else written down. Did I miss any hands? Mandy, you wanted to come back?
Yes. Again, sorry, Chair, it's picking up a point that was raised just now during the debate around not fully risk assessing or having our partners all working to the same process. And I just have concerns that could be a risk of itself moving forward as we do more and more project and grant work. And I think that's something that needs to be recognised moving forward as we put more and more and have more and more money flowing through that movement.
Recommend notice.
Right, proposed and seconded, all those in favour? That's unanimous, Claire. Thank you, Claire. It's been a very long morning, and I know that you've had a lot of other things going on, so I'd like to thank you for all the work and the team, and wish your family good health.
Thank you.
Going forward. Members, going to item 10, I'm just going to say this, I will have to walk out of this room at 12 minutes. So if I walk out, Robin will very ably take over. It'll be seamless. I will sit out as quietly as possible. So here we go. This is back some pretty pictures by the looks of things.
I'm afraid not particularly pretty pictures.
Oh.
Something different to look at, at least.
Over to you, Dan.
Great. Good morning. Thank you, members. So you've got before you our proposed good tourism plan, and I thought it would also just be a good opportunity just to kind of remind ourselves really as and reaffirm our role around tourism in the national parks, and specifically our role as the National Parks Authority and how we work with our partners. So, you know, we often have discussions around the relevancy of tourism. Now, we have a statutory purpose to promote both the understanding and also the enjoyment of the special qualities of Exmoor to the nation. So tourism is a key means of delivering that purpose. It's also a clear kind of way of delivering on our duty, but when we deliver that purpose, we can have social and economic well-being benefits for the area. You know, tourism is culturally and economically very important to this area. But of course, we also need to check and balance it against our first purpose, you know, to conserve and enhance natural beauty. These things have to be weighed up. So that's our kind of role, if you like, in terms of tourism, is to find that balance. And I think it's important to note at this stage there is no single body within the national park that has sole responsibility for tourism. There are lots of bodies that have got an interest and lots of bodies that play a role in tourism. In terms of our own corporate role, we've previously talked about this before, and we've reaffirmed it in this authority before, around having more of a lead on the destination management over and above the marketing of the area. So our role is very much looking around how we inform people once they're here about what to do, how to behave, you know, how to enjoy the area responsibly, safely. Obviously, we have a really key role in terms of an agency agreement with the highways authorities to manage the rights of way within the national park. We do a lot of work around business engagement training. We do a lot around product development. Some of that is things like our self-guided walks, things like the development of items like the Colwich Ray over the years, the Dark Skies Festival that we heard about earlier. You know, phenomenal success in terms of not only bringing people into the area, promoting the area, but also teaching them about the value of our dark skies and the opportunities to look after them. So they're just some examples of the kind of product development that we do, and we also lead on some of the research for the area which will aid our management. We then work together with other partners very much in terms of, we have the Exmoor Tourism Network where we bring together all of it, as many of the kind of different parties that we can. So primarily that's ourselves. It's Visit Exmoor, the main kind of marketing organisation for the area. It's also the smaller kind of town and local area associations, Visit Dalton, Visit Linton, Lynmouth, Porlock, etc. As well as other bodies, people like the National Trust, who have a key role to play in all of this. We work together on the Exmoor brand. You know, we've got our own corporate logo and the logo of the national park, but we also have a tourism brand that we can make more freely available to individual businesses in terms of marketing. And we work together very much on the kind of press and media liaisons. Some people come to us, some people come to Visit Exmoor or to others, and we pass them around, as depends really who is best placed to respond. And we've reaffirmed previously as an authority that our role is very much to support the industry in marketing and promotion, and it's very much about the industry themselves taking the lead on that, however they wish to do that, whether they want to do that through a single body, whether they want to do it through numerous bodies, whether they want to do it alone. But that very much our role is to support. Obviously, you'll be aware we have in the past put some funding into the work of Visit Exmoor. We had to sadly reduce that and end that this year with all of our financial pressures, but we are still working with them. We still provide kind of assets and things like that where we can share those with others to support that marketing and promotion. So as I mentioned, we do a bit of research, and we thought this would be a useful juncture just to highlight the visitor survey, which we now complete every 3 years, to give us a snapshot as to kind of really the more qualitative views of visitors and their experience here. You've got the summary infographic in your packs. The full report is available publicly online. But just a few highlights really is that we have absolutely outstanding visitor satisfaction. We have a net promoter score of 91. And that net promoter score can range from anything from -100 to +100. Anything over 70 is considered world class. So 91 really is pretty outstanding. You know, people were overall very satisfied with their visits. 100% of people felt that the national park was well managed and cared for. There were some areas where satisfaction was lower, as you may expect. Public transport, toilets, roads came up quite high on that. A quarter of all respondents cited the lack of digital connectivity being a major kind of drawback for their visit. That's obviously slightly outside of our remit, but it's just worth bearing in mind. I think one that's more relevant to us, but again beyond our direct control, and particularly in this kind of climate of kind of fiscal challenges, if you like, is that 97% are arriving by car, and that accounts for 84% of the overall carbon footprint of visitors to the national parks. So just the travel to the area is very significant, and only, well, less than 10% were intending to use public transport once they were here, and we know that the services, you know, have taken a backward step in recent years. You know, they are not as frequent and as reliable and as prolific as they once were. Perhaps what's even more worrying is that 50% of people said even if you had fantastic public transport services, even if you had loads of cycleways and resources, etc., that actually nothing would encourage them to use their car less. That doesn't, on the flip side, that does mean 50% are open to that use, but it is quite a challenge for us, and as I say, it's an area that's not in our direct control, and you know, in the past we have had some resources put into these kind of things which we simply don't have these days. Just very briefly in terms of, just give you an update really on the volume and value of tourism, we commission a STEAM survey annually, which gives us that kind of quantitative data around who's coming to the area. It is a model, you know, so it's not infallible, but it's pretty much the best model that is around and agreed by the ONS to use for tourism data. And if you look at the kind of 5 years really, and look at 2019 as a pre-COVID baseline and the last full calendar year, you'll see that overall we've kind of recovered from the impacts of COVID. We've seen a 1% increase in the number of visitor days, so the actual days spent on Exmoor by visitors. The actual visitor numbers to the area have risen by 6%, so we've seen obviously shorter stays and more day visits. And the economic value, once we index link it to allow for inflation using the RPI, it's grown by about 2%. Now, you know, that's in a way positive. However, I would add a note of caution that hospitality sector in particular has seen costs rising, I would say, far in excess of the RPI. So I suspect, you know, that 2% at best is a kind of levelling off. What we have also seen, though, is a massive swing, as I alluded to, around visitor behaviour. So we've seen an 11% increase in day visits, but overall staying visitors have fallen. But again, it's not been equal across the board. So serviced accommodation has really seen quite a big dramatic decline in that 5-year period of about 17%. So there are some big challenges out there for businesses. There are some opportunities as well. You know, over the last kind of 10 years, we have seen out of season tourism grow, which is positive. You know, it used to represent about 18% of our, I think it was 16 or 18% of our overall kind of spend came out of the main season. Now it's around 24%. So there are things happening in the right direction, but nevertheless big challenges. Now what you've got before you is a proposed good tourism plan. We've had various plans over the years and strategies that we've often helped to facilitate. Most recently we had the kind of COVID response and recovery plan, which, you know, led us really well through that very difficult time. It really brought partners together, and it was actually held up by one of the DEFRA ministers as in government as a really good example of the partnership work that National Parks enable. So that was very positive. I'm going to take the actual full plan as read. Don't worry, I'm not going to be going through it page by page. You've had it, you've got it in front of you. But I will just summarise really where we've got to. Really, the intention of this plan, I guess, is to bring different tourism partners together to address some of those challenges we've talked about and to maximise the opportunities we've got. And it's very much about seeking to find that balance. So, you know, you may recall when we did the National Park Management Plan consultation, we had a fairly significant public opinion survey. And that really demonstrated that need that we've talked about for balance, because we had 64% of respondents saying they were concerned about the impact of too many visitors at popular sites and their impact on the national park, but at the same time 61% were also very concerned about there not being enough visitors to maintain viability of businesses and services. So there's a balance to be had there, you know, and I think those two almost on face value that seems like it's a kind of conflicting view, but I think it's actually quite genuine to have those two legitimate concerns. Our kind of proposal through the Good Tourism Plan is to try and navigate how we balance those concerns. So it sits under our new management plan, and that's got an objective that Exmoor is promoted and managed as a regenerative tourism destination. Now, in the past we've talked a lot about sustainable tourism, which is in effect focus on minimising the impact of tourism on an area. And regenerative tourism is a kind of fairly new concept, maybe a bit of a buzzword, but it's kind of going a step further, and it's about leaving places in a better state than when we found them. And so last year the UK National Parks collectively published a vision stating that they wanted to be leaders in the field of regenerative tourism, and this is kind of our response at a local level as to how we might do that. And I think, if I'm honest, the terminology, whether we talk about sustainable tourism, regenerative tourism, eco-tourism, transformative tourism, whatever you want to call it, it can get a bit confusing. And so that's why we very much focus this plan on just saying it's about good tourism, good management of tourism, and that's around you know, the right people at the right time at the right place. But effectively, it's about tourism that is good for our visitors, so they continue to have that great experience. It's good for our businesses, but we also want it to be good for our communities and good for our landscapes. So we want to see them putting in more than they take away. The plan doesn't set any kind of numerical target around the volume and value. As I say, it's very much focused on the good management of tourism. And so as one example, you know, we look at around how we retain more of that economic benefit in the area, rather than necessarily seeking to grow the pounds and pennies spent in the area. So it could be that we don't have to grow tourism to really benefit our economy more if we can retain more of those benefits locally. So what we also do in the plan is we give a whole load of context, which I won't go through, but a lot more kind of background as to what the situation is at the moment. And we also look at the kind of potential benefits and the costs of tourism, just so that's upfront and it's shared with everybody. At the heart of the plan, there are kind of three shared objectives for tourism, and these are that tourism is regenerative, productive and resilient. I won't go through them all in detail because again you've had those in front of you. But what we do in the full plan is we break each of these three objectives into three themes, and under each of those three themes we have kind of some three kind of potential actions that different partners can take. So if I just take that regenerative one, which will be more of a focus for the Park Authority, others like this at Exmoor I suspect will focus more on the productive area, and that's where we bring this all together. But you know, under the regenerative one, it starts with sustainability as a theme, so it's around, okay, first of all, how do we minimise our risk? How do we then look around visitor management and visitor information to kind of engage our visitors in this and promote the right, responsible use of the area? But then actually, if we want to be truly regenerative, we talk about giving back. How can those visitors actually give something back while they're here? It could be through volunteering for parts of their stay, it could be through donations to care, or it could be supporting community initiatives. Lots of examples around that, but that's that kind of example of working that regenerative one through. We've done the same for productive and resilient. It's not a detailed delivery plan. It's more about engaging and communicating an approach within the tourism sector, and also sharing that with our communities, and we're hoping to, once we've approved this, to share this with parish councils, with community groups and stakeholders so that they're involved, because that's part of it. If we want to leave Exmoor in a better place, we need communities probably to have a better engagement with tourism than perhaps they have in the past. Finally, in the plan we talk about 5 kind of principles, if you like, of delivery, and so this is something that we've asked all of the partners that have signed up to this plan. So we've got lots of partners who are involved in this plan. We've worked very closely with the likes of Visit Exmoor, those local tourism groups, the National Trust that I identified earlier. They've all adopted it. We've also invited the local authorities to adopt it or endorse it, if you like. I think North Devon Council have signed up to it. Devon County and Somerset Council are just going through their processes with portfolio holders to formally agree that. But as I say, it's the idea isn't that we have a detailed action plan, but it's really a means of array of us working, and so we've got these 5 kind of principles of delivering around showing care for our landscapes, communities, businesses and visitors, celebrating all that's special about Exmoor and instilling that sense of pride in our communities and sharing that with our visitors. It's about communication, so that we share our intentions with each other, with stakeholders, with the broader community, and amplify messages where we are able to. And then the final 2, you could look at being the same, but I think they're slightly different in that there will be things we can do together and we can collaborate on, and we're already working on some of those, but there are also areas where we can coordinate, where also, actually, we don't need to do that because you're doing that, so we'll coordinate to best use our resources. So, in conclusion, as I say, the plan doesn't really seek to set out all of the answers to all of the challenges that tourism is facing, but it does look to build on best practice. It looks to bring partners together around a set of key objectives that they've all signed up to and been engaged with, and to inspire people towards delivering a better future tourism for Exmoor. So the tourism network will continue to meet together, to share ideas, to collaborate, to coordinate, to look at what we can do together, to look at what individuals are doing, and work with that together. But the idea is really that it is that, as I say, tourism is good for our landscapes and communities as well as our businesses and visitors. So that's where I'll leave it, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much. Laura.
Thank you, Dan. This is really great to see, and I really want to say don't underestimate those members, particularly don't underestimate those visitor scores. In the National Trust where I worked for 7 years, we would have killed for scores like that. It's a real testament to the work here, and it's reflected in, kind of blows my mind, that we're the joint 6th on the awareness of national parks in the UK. Like, that's huge because we're one of the smallest and one of the least visited. So that's, again, testament to our communications work and those visitor satisfaction scores. And we're ahead of Somerset and the Jurassic Coast on awareness as well, which Jurassic Coast has huge marketing budgets and stuff. It's great to see this strategic leadership. I think it's been lacking in Exmoor as a whole. We've got the LBETs, which cover Devon and Somerset and Exmoor, but to have this focus on the national park itself, I think is really important. I just wanted to ask, is there a risk that Devon and Somerset won't support it? I hope not, it's just a red tape thing. And just on this sort of partner mix, I just wondered if there's space to have people, especially if getting here and coming by car is an issue, like bus company, train company, some of the big sort of widespread providers, the camping caravan club, those sort of people involved in really drilling down into some of this work with us, working in partnership with us, without wanting to completely take over what Visit Exmoor does. And then one final question, do we have the resources to continue to drive this forward? Because it's a really ambitious plan with lots of partners involved, and obviously limited staff capacity. So, sorry, lots of questions there.
Yeah, thank you, Laura. I think if we take the last one, then, we haven't set out detailed targets, we haven't set out detailed actions. As I say, it's more about a direction of travel. It's an aspiration, I guess. Obviously, a lack of funding is going to hold us back as around how far we can travel that road. It is, I think the strength is in the partnership. I think alone we could not do much of this at all. I don't think there's any organisation in the area that could deliver much of this, but I think together we can definitely make some headway. I think in terms of kind of those partners and that mix, it's an interesting one. I think the tourism sector struggles at large, if I'm honest, to engage with transport providers. So for those that aren't aware, we have these local visitor economy partnerships, which are meant to be a bit more strategic, a bit broader, looking at a kind of county-wide level, bringing together public-private interests, and certainly the Devon and Somerset, both LBETs,
have struggled to engage people like First in both. So I think that's the level at the moment we would be looking to engage them, and the idea is that this plan would almost feed into those LVEPs and say, well, these are the issues facing Exmoor, this is what we need from you. But I think, obviously we would welcome their involvement, but I wouldn't, kind of count on it immediately. I'm hoping that the two county councils will support it, at an officer level, they've fed in, they've been very supportive. I think their words were, well, there's nothing not to like in this, in a way. There's no resource commitment expected from them to endorse it. It's around principles and ways of working. So I'm hoping it is a kind of rubber stamping. We've worked with them over many years in different ways. We will continue to work with them whether they formally sign up or not, but I'm not anticipating them not, but that's not my decision to make.
Thank you. Evelyn?
Thanks, Chairman. Well, I think at a time where resources are very sparse, and there was alarm and despondency at first when the industry realised that the local authorities could no longer put actual cash in, I think this is an even better idea than giving cash, which is likely to be spent on marketing initiatives which don't always hit the spot. So congratulations on getting this together. I think it's a really good response to the current constraints that we have. But at a time when Visit Cornwall has actually folded, I think it's really good to see that Exmoor is still supporting the local tourism industry in this way. I think it's a good thing. And thank you for sharing it with us today, and let's all get behind it, and let's hope that Devon and Somerset can see the good in getting behind this particular initiative, because tourism is so important for this area in terms of employment.
Completely agree. Marcus?
Really again. I'd just like to agree with what Evelyn said there. Yes, congratulations, Dan. I mean, I seem to have spent years listening to you, and it's always very informative, and I always listen quite intently. And it just, I think that experience comes through in this, and I say it has been, interesting over the last 20, 30 years, I suppose. I suppose it was more about some of the details. Because it was very interesting about the visitor numbers and those stats of visitor numbers and day visitors, etc., etc. And I always used to, in a former life, I used to quite like day visitors because they seem to have bigger budgets than people who are staying for longer terms. But I suppose the question is, what's the definition of a day visitor? Are we looking at Greater Exmoor? We just talked about Exmoor. How does that figure into it as well, I suppose? And is a day visitor someone coming from Taunton, or is a day visitor someone who's, I don't know, from as far away as Yeovil, maybe? I always remember being very shocked once in mine had talked to somebody who was on a day trip and they'd come down from Birmingham for the day, which I thought that was key. But I suppose that shows the wonderful place we live in. So that I thought was quite interesting. And I also say, are they also those people on holiday elsewhere? Are they coming from, maybe, dare say, the Jurassic Coast and venturing over here for the day? Does that class as a day visitor? I suppose that is a southwest thing. I was quite interested in, I think there was a figure, I think it's in your slides actually, you have to excuse me, for some reason page 16 of my slides didn't print out. You said about the difference between more call for budget and high end, and I wonder how we get that information, and I suppose we can all know what they're talking about with high end, but then what's the definition of budget? And it's quite interesting, someone said to me the other day that, I think they said in real term inflation over the last 4 or 5 years is 40%. I don't quite know what he meant, whether that means if something cost you £50 5 years ago, it's going to cost you £70 now. I'd argue it's probably more likely to be £80. And how do you bring that into it? And I think the grow and retain, I'd argue, I think you talked about, we don't necessarily have to grow it, we have to also retain that income, which is very good, but actually wouldn't it be nice if we could grow it a little and retain a little bit more? And I know when you just only have to look at those partners, there's some very bright and clever people in those organisations, and so it's nice to see that happening. But and where can I suppose, what if, as a park, we're not giving money and we've got these partners? Is there anything, is our local plan up to matching the aspirations of this document? Are there changes that could be made, especially if we're talking about different sorts of accommodation? And then I'm going to get slightly pessimistic. How much, when it comes to what's going on with the general economy, and we talk about the worldwide economy, and how, whether we're value for money when it comes to tourism, that's a different sort of value for money, I suppose, and different sort of product. But being slightly pessimistic, how much control do we have? And assuming we do have control, how do we influence that with the partners? Maybe that's a bit of an open-ended question. Apologies for that.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. I think in terms of the definition of a day visit, certainly the STEAM model that we uses the definition of anybody on a leisure trip within the national park for 3 hours or more. So it kind of excludes your kind of local dog walker. But if it's, I don't know, somebody from Dalton having a day out in Lynmouth, that would be counted as a day visit. If it was somebody from Yeovil, Birmingham, but they aren't staying overnight within the area, that would count as a day visit. And certainly in our visitor survey, we ask people whether they're visiting for the day from home, visiting for the day from another destination while on holiday, so that would be your example of Jurassic Coast, or whether we are visiting or staying within the local area. So that's how we kind of define it. I think, that budget versus high end, I don't think anybody's ever really kind of qualitatively kind of defined those, but I think certainly the evidence that we're seeing is really that there's quite a demand for things like campsites, bunk barns, bobbies, etc., kind of that slightly budget end of accommodation. There are still, I think, the higher wealth individuals who are still wanting their luxury breaks. Country house hotels, boutique hotels are kind of bearing up okay. It is that middle market, that if you kind of think that traditional 3-star bed and breakfast, that is where I think we're really seeing a dent in demand. Consumers at that level seem to be favouring self-catering over service these days. Local plan then, that is kind of being looked at the moment, but I would actually say, the current version has got quite a bit of flexibility in terms of if somebody wants to kind of turn a dwelling into a guest house and then turn it back again, they can do that, etc. So I don't see that as a major barrier. There is stock out there as such. It's I don't think the local plan is the issue, but as I say, there will be an opportunity to review that. And sorry, what was the last question? I'm not sure I quite got that.
I think it was probably unanswerable, actually. I think it was how much control do we actually have. But I think also there's just one other point, this thing I wrote down was, I think you mentioned that actually in real terms, with rising costs, etc., that maybe the benefit isn't as high as maybe the visitor numbers being increases. There was an argument that actually it's probably a negative benefit at the moment, and I think if you spoke to smaller people, particularly in the hospitality sector, they'd say that it's getting increasingly hard, and actually if we lose those businesses, then what do we do, and what's the offer going to be? So that's an extra question. Sorry, Chair. I've changed my question at the last minute.
Yeah, so
might be a welfare issue.
I think in terms of that kind of control versus influence, it is influence we don't have control. We have very few levers in our box, if you like, or tools in the box. Sorry, mixing up my metaphors, but we have our planning role, but beyond that, we have very few kind of formal levers that we can pull. But I think we do have influence. We've got engagement. We work very closely with the tourism bodies. We work directly with quite a few business providers. We've got our Rural Enterprise Exmo Day coming up where we bring everybody together, and they're a good opportunity to kind of just try and bring people along with us on the journey. But yeah, in terms of that last one, it's very difficult, isn't it, at the moment? And I think we do know that it is very hard for businesses. They are seeing a big impact on kind of costs, etc. Employment, which we kind of detail a bit in the report. And I think it's they're outside of our direct control, but we'd be remiss not to kind of acknowledge them and
support people as best we can through them.
Thank you. Fran?
Thank you. I think it's, well, I don't know if that's saying amazing, but I think it's really something to be proud of that 88% of people who were surveyed want to come back to this area. I think that is really, really good. Did we get any comments from the people who were unsure, or the 2% who weren't planning to return? I mean, it might be if they came from abroad, they might not be visiting, England again. So I think it would be interesting to note, what sort of their comments were, and that also covers the where they were unsatisfied with the state of our, or not necessarily the state, but maybe the lack of public toilets or the cost of public toilets. What was their reasoning, and was it reasonable? What they were requiring from that, as well as the roads. I mean, the public transport you've also mentioned about with first bus, etc., and trying to encourage that. But I just wondered if there were comments at the back of the data that we have that would help.
Yeah, so in terms of lack of return, I think you've already answered that. It generally was, it's either overseas visitors, there are often the 2% who aren't coming back. It's not that they've had a bad time, but they're on a kind of once in a lifetime trip to the UK or something like that. Those kind of undecided, often it was just a kind of, we just don't know, we might do, we might not, there's other places to go to, but there was no kind of underlying, we've had an awful time so we're not coming back. And I think we've always generally had a higher level of repeat visits here, and it's the kind of, the adage is often once discovered, never forgotten. It's almost a marketing lingo for Exmoor, but awareness isn't as high. People, because it's harder to get to, we're more remote, people don't come here as often, but once they do discover it, they often end up saying, actually, this is my place now, and I come back time and time again. I think in terms of the other areas, we don't delve into a lot of detail just because the visitor survey already takes about 10 to 15 minutes and people are kind of giving up their time. But I think, generally, the toilets in particular, I think, when we actually kind of drill down into detail, a lot of that was around Linton Limerick, where they're now charging for toilets, so people are understandably unhappy about that, and it is difficult. Often it is around availability, where we've seen public toilets closed, and some of it is around the state of them, to be honest, that they're not always a particularly pleasurable visit. So I think we've got that kind of anecdotal. When I think one thing to say is they are areas where we have lower levels of satisfaction. With the exception of public transport, the average score was still one of kind of fair. So it was kind of, the roads are a bit potholy, a bit unloved, but actually, it's okay. So although it's lower than some of the other areas, things like rights of way and attractions were up there, as we're really happy with these other areas, people weren't necessarily unhappy, they just weren't as glowing about them. I think the one example, it's the first time actually since we've done the survey in this format that we've seen actually the average dropping below there was public transport, and I think really that was a lack of availability, and particularly the coastal route this year, and despite best efforts, it wasn't as great of a service as we've had in previous years this year.
Thank you. Best efforts and huge public subsidy.
Yes.
Robin.
Right. Thanks, Chair. Dan, first of all, I'll move the recommendation. And I've got a couple other points as well. Huge value in the collaboration approach to this. As we've seen in the past, as soon as you end up with an entity effectively taking responsibility for promotion as a single entity, the complacency sets in between all those sat behind it, don't they? They feel they don't need to bother. So the collaborative approach, I think, is what provides the greatest value here. And I think probably appropriate, it's seen as a good tourism guide rather than something that's promotional as such. I think there are a couple areas here. What's evident is we've got changing types of tourists, haven't we? And changing approach to people coming and staying here. But just thought we've just got to bear in mind actually that within the communication bit, there's a huge element of us making sure the messages are plain and clear for those people accessing the countryside. Because after all, we had a tragic event on Witchford Hill a couple of weeks ago. Now, Witchford Hill is festooned with huge signs highlighting the risk. It's not something I'd really like to see all over Exmoor, making it appear that sort of the countryside is a frighteningly risky place to be and to keep away from it. So there's a real element of our role there in ensuring education. There's probably an element in ensuring that the greater bodies within the UK, the natural Englands of this world, actually pulled their finger out and maybe put a little tiny bit more money into highlighting access to the countryside and how you do it and so on. When I found out how much they're spending at the moment, I was actually appalled that it's such a small budget last year. In fact, you'd probably be scrabbling around under the table here to looking for a few coins would help them out. That's the level of, and if we're looking to get people to access and looking to people to enjoy and support our national park purposes, we need to make sure our education's really right alongside that. Other than that, a great report, and thank you for all the work put into it, and I think it highlights the value, from my point of view, that Exmoor provides. Thanks.
Thank you. I've got Andy, then Andy. Andy. I just got my hand up second time.
Thank you, Ben. I like the report. I like the name, Good Tourism Plan, and obviously there's a lot behind that in terms of good tourists. They come here, spend their money, but actually don't interfere with nature too much, and ideally drive electric cars, I guess. So I think that encapsulates a lot, and I like the three areas Jen's been productive. I have a couple of questions, but there are a couple of pictures in here which I'm a little bit uncomfortable about, but I'll come on to that. Reading your initial report, 2.7, I initially read it and I read it wrong, but this highlights to me, it says, item 2.7, that National Park will focus, I initially read it, focus on the management of tourists and not rather than the promotion of tourists. Obviously, when we think about our partners, they probably want to focus on promotion of tourism. But I realise I missed out the word more. So is that balance between managing tourism and promotion tourism? My question on that will be, how do we get to that point? I sort of go along with it, but and how much of our partners sign up to that? Then I guess going in the line, if we are going to manage the tourism, that can be taken as managing what they do while they're here, and it seems unfortunate that we've got shorter stays. So it's striking me one way of managing that and improving productivity, as you've talked about productivity, is actually increasing the spend while they're here. Are there any initiatives to try and increase the stay while they're here? I guess we could be discussing at the next forum, the business meeting we've got coming up. How can we increase the stay? Have you got any plans to sort of workshops on that? And secondly, when they're here, to spend more money. I guess by those two factors create good tourists again, because they're not driving as much in their cars because they're doing one journey here, spending for 2 days, and then going away, or 3 days, and that reduces their carbon footprint, but actually brings more employment and money. So the question on that is there some sort of plan to identify increasing spend? Then the two photographs I was uncomfortable about. One is, it says tourists go home, which I think is taken from Barcelona, actually, if you look at Wikipedia, that picture there. And it doesn't reflect my feeling of local people and tourism. So it doesn't look nice, and it's from Barcelona. So also, when you look at the survey of local people's views, there's only one survey going, and it was 73% said they want to encourage more tourists, and then it was the tourists who were less comfortable. The more recent figures, I understand, don't split the two. So I'm actually uncomfortable with that. And the picture above it is of Snowdonia, of people queuing up, going up the mountain. I would have thought it'd be good if we could have a picture which picks up some issues we have on Exmoor right now, over tourism. One, I think, is camper vans parked up, say, on, for example, parked up on beauty spots. That's a challenge we have. And the tourists go home. I think it'd be a better report without it, personally. But I'll let you come back on that one.
Yeah, Ben, if I cover out one last, Ben, I guess they were put in there to be a little bit provocative, and I think we do clearly say in the text, we do not have some of these questions at the moment, but this plan is about making sure we don't end up in the situation that we've had in Barcelona, that we've had in Snowdonia and in other areas. So I think, you know, on reflection, we probably need to cap some men, which would help do that, if, you know, or we could replace them. But, you know, they were designed to kind of provoke that kind of thing. Actually, what is the cost of inaction is that, you know, and some of you will be aware that I have a background that I used to work up in Snowdonia before I moved here, you know, almost 20 years ago. And at that time, they did not have any of those pressures whatsoever. You know, those queues on the top of Snowdon Summit and things were not a thing. You know, having to book your parking space wasn't a thing. It's only in a relatively small window of time that things have changed. So I guess, in a way, our intention of putting them in was kind of stir things up a bit, a little, you know, and provoke that discussion about, is this what we want? When people say, oh, we want more tourism, you know, it's like, actually, is it what we want, or is it around we want to retain more benefits from them? I think in terms of that kind of how we arrived at that management versus marketing, but I think that's been an evolution over many, many years, and a lot of head scratching, both within this authority and working with our partners around different roles of different partners. People like Visit Exmoor would very much see it as their role to be the primary kind of marketing body, and I think if, you know, they would want our support, but I think they would feel they want to leave that, that's kind of their role as a voice of the industry, and it's certainly been the wish of this authority in the past. You know, we've been given a very clear steer that, yes, we want to support marketing, but not to be leading it. So that's kind of, as I say, it's evolved, I think, you know, and this plan, and that's why we've kind of asked you to endorse it rather than adopt it as such, because it's not only our plan, this is a shared plan with all of our partners. In terms of what next and how do we lengthen stage things, again, I would see that probably more of a role of some of our partners in this rather than us directly, but that's always the next stage. It's getting these objectives. The network will now be looking at, okay, what can we do? And it's that kind of collaboration versus coordination. It might be there's something that Visit Exmoor do, but we can amplify it over our channels. It might be something, you know, in the past we've seen really good, very grassroots initiatives, kind of, you know, Porlock did things like their rutting weekends 20 years ago. And they worked really well in terms of they actually come down. You know, the Dark Skies is a really good example of, you know, again, that's where we haven't led on the marketing, but we've got that out to millions of people on national news. Obviously, Dark Skies pretty much requires an overnight visit. So there's lots we can do, but I think that's the next level of detail to kind of work with partners to tease out, and it will be a little bit resource dependent. I think I've answered everything, but please come back.
Thank you for writing down. Mandy next, please.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan.
I did book in for 2 Dark Skies events, and on neither night was there a star to be seen, sadly. So if you could fix that for next year. We've got visitors coming and everything, so just shows how inclement our weather can be. Just a few points actually regarding that picture that you mentioned. I balked at that slightly as well. Only the pictures speak louder than words. And whilst the picture was there and I picked that up very quickly, it was much harder to note the actual satisfaction figures alongside of it. So I think you've just got to be really careful what pictures you use. And for me, everyone's an opportunity to promote. Firstly, a thank you to whomever puts all social media posts out here. They are shared really widely. I get them on a daily basis on one of the pages I manage locally, and they always have great pictures. And for me, it's good for the soul every day. It reminds you that you are close to and on top of this wonderful place that is Exmoor, and I think we need to remember and remind ourselves how lucky we are to have it here every day. Talking about the day visits, for me that's problematic in that, one, you've got more traffic and transport, and number two, it's how you actually capitalise on those day visits, and I think there's probably a piece of work to do on that. I don't know, and you'll probably tell me this happens already, whether we have QR codes right around the park for people to donate. You know, if you like what we're doing, help us with our work. I don't know if we do that already, you know, £5 buys this, £50 buys this, you know, that sort of donating because you're here on a day trip. It might be something people would be willing to do. And also for me, there's something around day visits and hotspots, and there was a part in the report that says some of our areas are getting lots of people in them, and I think if you're here for a day, you are more likely to go to those famous spots that you've seen. So that could actually look at people arriving at different destinations if they're all doing it for a day trip. So I think that's something to think about, because that was picked up by some visitors. And lastly, it's capitalisation on the pictures and the photos. I sit every meeting and I look at the beautiful pictures that flash up on the screen. And I think there's a huge value in those. There's lots of people in the country making lots of money over lovely pictures, whether they're selling them, they're used. And I just wonder, moving forward, if that's just something we could look at in the future for our beautiful views to be bringing an income in to help protect those views. I think there's something circular in that. But no, thank you. Like I said, I don't know who's putting everything out, but the way they do it, the pictures they do, I think they really capture people's attention, and it's an important part of promoting the park as well as the messages you're leading.
Thank you, Mandy. I'll just come back very briefly on those. So I think one thing I probably ought to have said as well in response to Andrew is that obviously this report isn't intended to be consumer facing at all. It's very much a kind of working with our partners document. Yes, it will be publicly available, but to be honest, if it got that much coverage, that would be a good thing. No publicity is a bad thing, but I don't see visitors picking this up. It's not going to be, something like that. In terms of QR codes, yes, we do have them. I have to say they're not particularly effective. We see a smattering of donations come in through them, but we do have them, particularly on some of our popular routes. It's just a simple kind of, have you enjoyed this walk? Would you like to contribute to upkeeping, and you can scan it and make a donation. So, we're kind of game to continue trying that and finding as many avenues to reach people. I think in terms of that dispersion, some of the work we've done on things like our Exmoor Explorer routes is in part an answer to that. So, that's a set of 10 short walks, kind of up to a couple of hours. It's got some of the obvious honeypot sites, such as Tar Steps and Watersmeet, but it's also got some other equally good walks that probably people haven't thought of. So, given we get those repeat visits, even if it's a day visitor, they're often coming several times. So the idea is, well, actually, if you've enjoyed this walk, how about next time you go and do this one in another area? It's also an interesting one, and our colleagues in our recreation and access team can speak more on this, but obviously some of those sites, while they are very heavily visited, are also heavily managed, and so there is an argument that actually condensing everybody into a few well-managed sites and leaving other areas a bit more untouched is the way to go. In terms of the photography, Ben, thank you for feedback, and we'll share that with the team, particularly Caro, who does a lot of our social media. But yeah, absolutely, the photography we've got available is great. And just to highlight, one of the initiatives we have done in recent years is working with some local photographers who very kindly donated their images to go onto the Exmoor Commons, which is a photo library that businesses and any organisation can use. It's curated, so it's high quality photos available that they can download and use. So, but yeah, absolutely, imagery is key.
Thanks, Dan. Bill.
Thank you, Robin, and thank you, Dan. It's great, and it's great you're taking the lead on this. It's really important. Really, it's just a factual question. People that come here for country sports, shooting and hunting, are they counted as tourists, or is that treated as something different?
Yeah, again, using that same definition, if they're here for a leisure visit of over 3 hours, they would be counted as a visitor, a tourist. Things like our visitor survey, they come out relatively low. I think it's about 3% coming here for country sports, but we're also very aware there's probably a slight kind of failure of the research there, in that they tend to kind of go out on a shoot, keep themselves. They're not kind of walking the high street necessarily and being stopped by a surveyor. But they would be counted as a visitor, and obviously, the kind of hotels and stuff that are putting them up, all of that data is fed into that model.
Thanks, Fran.
Thank you. Going back to the photographs, I understand from what you said this isn't going to be for the public facing, but I think perhaps if you'd have put underneath those two photos, the tourists go home and that's Snowdonia, because I didn't realise that was Snowdonia. You put in brackets exactly where those are. That is less negative, I think, than just using, because I thought, where would you have written that in this area, you know, on the pavement? So I think that is just for some of us who, you know, maybe know a bit less than some of the other partners, that might be helpful. And driving here this morning, I mean, the leaves, the colours, it was just absolutely beautiful. And I think we need to, you know, encourage far more of the photographs, as you say you are doing, because it is a beautiful area. Thank you.
Mike. And then Marcus.
Oh, sorry. Has it been moved for approval, Chair? I'm supposed to second it. I'm happy to second it.
It's been seconded.
Well, don't fight over it.
Sorry, if I can just come back, so it just occurs to me that many conversations I've had over the course of this summer is about how they like coming to where we are in particular, because it's so quiet. And actually, you know, we can talk about, well, tourists go home, but let's be honest, Exmoor's not as busy as many other places. And I think that's actually a selling point. I know it's no good having the best kept secret, etc. And obviously you don't want to make it too busy. That actually people who come here because it's quiet no longer come here. But it is something that I get that's been said to me an awful lot over the course of this summer. And in a positive way.
Thank you. Any comments there, Dan?
Only to say you're absolutely right. When you compare our visitor survey results with other national parks, we all tend to ask very similar questions, so we can do a bit of comparing and contrasting. And our top three attractors to the area are the landscape, tranquility and wildlife. The tranquility is the one where we stand out compared to others. You know, it is much higher as a reason to come here. And, you know, I've got family in the Lake District, and if you go there in August, you do not go there for tranquility. You know, you have awe-inspiring views and everything else, but you don't go there for tranquility. So again, and that's, I think, partly why, again, we're not necessarily pushing in here to say, yes, what we want is a 20% growth in numbers, because we're very aware that could absolutely undermine that very loyal business base we've already got. So it's very much about the right people at the right time in the right place and managing it. So it might be that there are times when we can take more visitors, but there are times when we might say actually, you know, we do have it already. Go to somewhere like Lynmouth, if it's a good August bank holiday weekend and the weather is good, you will struggle to park. So we do have those kind of capacity issues already at times, but there is also a lot of latent kind of capacity at other times of the year.
Yes, I don't want to prolong the debate, but I'd just like to endorse that, having managed Wimbledon when it was attracting 250,000 visits a year, when you drill down with visitors on site surveys, I think the second most popular comment was that they loved the peace and tranquility when they were sharing it with huge numbers of people. And so it's all about perception and how those visitors are managed, really.
Thank you. Don't think I've got anyone else on my list. I have a proposal and a seconder. So all those in favour of the recommendation. It's unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dan. It's great from my perspective, really, to see it staying a good tourism guide rather than a mass tourism guide. Quality is probably as you highlighted, isn't it? Thank you, Dan, very much. We will move on to item 11, personnel update. We've got no starters at the moment. The seasonal leavers for the information advisor. It's Lee Clark, Shirley Trace, Lisa Clark, Tracy Brock and Connie Ross. So our thanks to them for all the time and effort they put in during the season. I think we've had quite a successful season. Talking to the people downstairs, I think they've been quite pleasantly surprised with the move and how well it's gone and the football they've had there. Sarah.
So just on that, if I might interrupt, today is the last day that the centre's open downstairs. So if you would like to do a little bit of early Christmas shopping to help with our income generation strategy and our tourism strategy, that'd be much appreciated. Thank you.
Could you remind me what the member discount is?
I can't, but I'm sure Claire will when you go downstairs.
Right.
I didn't realise it was I didn't realise it was seasonal. I thought it was here all year round. But you have Dalberton by Starlight in December. Do you not open, or are you going to open especially for that or not? It's a lost opportunity because you can barely get into Dalberton on that day.
We are open that weekend.
Ah.
reopening that weekend.
Thank you. Thanks, Ben.
Friday to Sunday, I believe.
Great, thank you very much. That answered that one quite easily. Right, we'll move on then. Item 12, members' reports. I don't think I've been one.
Yeah, I'd just like, following what Andrea said, I need to comment then. I went on to the launch of the management plan, and the big thing that struck me, actually, I stayed on up to the end, actually, before they got kicked out, is the staff input. It was great to see. The video which we've seen was made by the staff. I think Carol learned new software to create that, which is great. And it leads me to all those phrase I use about commercial thinking. What I saw is people think about getting value of money, and we're making that video themselves. And the staff were involved in pouring the milk and the coffee and brushing up afterwards. It was a real team effort. And you don't always see it in charities, but you don't see it in every organisation. And I think it's a really positive thing to see. And I've also heard a comment more recently from one of the field staff, very positive comment that came to fit a field gate on my farm. And their comment there was that the feeling within parks right now is very positive. And I said, well, why do you think that is? It's actually the tougher times of bringing this together. And I think that can be a good thing about a challenging time. I saw it that day. Everyone was mucking in and really working well together. So, no, well done to all the staff, and well done for Sarah for leading it.
Thanks, Andrew. Well attended, and definitely the media came out was excellent afterwards. Any other members? In which case I will close the meeting. Thank you very much.